Welcome back to another episode of the Google Ad Strategy Hub. Today, we're going to talk again about affordability. I made a video podcast. Hey, what's up? Absolutely. Do you want me to open it for you? I'm making a video for my YouTube channel. It's totally okay. You're in my video. Can I leave you in my video, like with your little hand?
Sure. It'll open it.
I opened it a little, but not all the way, but I loosened it enough for you. Totally okay. I'm going to finish my episode real quick, and then I'll be in to hang out with you. Welcome back to another episode of the Google Ad Strategy Hub. I am your host, Sarah Stemen, and today we're going to talk again about Google Ads affordability because it's something on everyone's mind right now as CPCs are getting increasingly expensive. It is painful to watch in some circumstances. I did an episode a couple days ago about Google Ads affordability specifically, where I really made the recommendation to lean into content and get that content engine going for you if you can't afford ads. And I think to a certain extent, although that I still stand by that, that's my true message. I feel like saying that just makes people disappointed because they're like, I want to do Google Ads. I want to pay. I want to put that engine or that energy of money behind my business so my business can absolutely take off. And then I'm saying, oh, you can't afford it. You need to go do SEO. And they're like, but I wanted to buy the mansion. I didn't want to have or be stuck building the house, right? Which is really the difference there. Renting a mansion versus building a house, PPC versus SEO. So let's just take this conversation a little bit further and say that we still want to pay for ads, right? But we just can't afford Google. Then what do we do? And so I would say if you do have a little bit of budget, right, but you're not really ready for the prime time, the Madison Square Avenue ads, the expensive CPCs, then what do we do? And I would say at this point, if you're still bound and determined to do Google Ads, we start really diving deep into campaign types. We look at very specific campaigns and we accept sort of the pros and the cons behind those campaigns. So let's talk about it. So the first campaign that I would suggest probably staying away from if budget is really an issue, and I'm just going to say it, is search campaigns. Search campaigns, especially when it talks about like non-brand search, that's going to be the creme of la creme, the most expensive CPCs. If I have a shoe brand, for example, and I were to just advertise shoes, running shoes, I'm competing with Nike, Reebok. I mean, every single big shoe brand. It's such a generic term. It's such a brand awareness play that you could get absolutely cheaper somewhere else. Now, if I type it in, I will get a lot of shopping ads at the top, and maybe I won't even get search ads. The search ads that do show are going to be very expensive, but those shopping ads that are coming out of Performance Max a lot of times, or even a shopping campaign, again, are going to be very, very pricey because that intent there is high. But again, if you think about and I'm using a non-brand where the price can be expensive, it's right there at the top of the page. When someone's searching, those again are really premium spots in premium ads. And so you really have to think about that. So my suggestion is actually a demand gen campaign. If I were to explain a demand gen campaign to somebody that is brand new and has never run PP, what I would call it is an advanced display campaign, because frankly, it has display in it. And in the old days, display actually used to be a very, very good ad type to run. And to an extent, I will say that display, we call it programmatic at this point. We run it, I'll just say it, outside of Google Ads when I'm working for big brands. Display is still a very, very, very valid ad type. So I don't want you to write off display. It's just I tend to not recommend Google's display network just because the inventory of quality isn't there. And it's folded into other campaigns that do have some good quality. So I recommend if you don't have a big budget and you want to start lightly in ads and you can't afford search, to frankly start out with a demand gen campaign. And I'm going to talk about it in a lot more detail in this video here. Think about demand gen campaign, again, as an advanced display or even a social campaign. It is an AI successor to discovery and display campaigns. And frankly, it's Google's answer to social media campaigns on Facebook or Meta, essentially. And where the demand gen campaigns show up as opposed to a traditional display ad while you're working on websites is really the game changer here. They're in Google's most immersive experiences. So if you're watching YouTube on your mobile phone, I don't know about you, I'm very ADHD. I will many times be watching a video and then I will be scrolling while I'm watching the video in that feed and I'll be looking for what video I'm going to watch next. You will see ads interspersed with those videos. They almost look like videos, but they're not. They're the same size as the video box. And so they're in there as I'm scrolling. And if you think about how I'm essentially watching a video, listening, I'm sort of half listening while scrolling, looking for my next video, and that ad has a lot more intent and a lot more of my attention than an ad if I were reading the news and I see those ads on the sidebar, because it's directly in my line of vision as I'm scrolling, as opposed to when we're talking about a display ad, which again shows at the sidebar while I'm reading an article. So if you kind of think about it in this type of way, you can see how a lot of us really, really like demand gen. The big challenge there, though, is they're not always going to convert, right? Because listen to what I just said. I'm watching a YouTube video, I'm scrolling through my feed, I'm going past ads, I'm sort of passively seeing them. But guess what? I'm not going to click on an ad and then go buy something right there, then and there. It's going to either be implanted into my subconscious, I can't even talk today. Oh my gosh, I've been at a dance competition all weekend. It is either implanted into my subconscious, or it's something that I maybe mentally take note of, but then I will think like, I'll just do that later. Or it's a website that I've previously seen before and I'm just being reminded of it in there. So when you think about it like that, I want you to set your expectations. Anytime something is really close to the conversion and that buying process, it is going to cost more. And that is part of why demand gen has a lower cost associated with it. But when, again, I describe the interaction, it can be a very, very good thing for building your brand and your awareness. And I would even say your consideration. When I was working for larger advertisers, we many times, as we were media planning, placed demand gen in that consideration set, depending on what that ad copy and that call to action looks like. So I would say maybe in between awareness and consideration, or full on consideration, again, depending on what you're saying in that ad itself in the creative. Another benefit that I'm seeing is I do feel like Google is really testing with demand gen. The other day I was watching a YouTube video, and on the end cap, I was shown a scrollable picture that I could scroll to the side of with multiple pictures. So again, I feel like Google is trying to monetize a lot of this extra inventory they have because they have a lot of it. So really think about some of this as Google's new technology. It has the most immersive, the most AI type experience for the user. And then for the advertiser, we get to capitalize on that, especially if we're moving in these type of environments. So how are you going to shift when you do this? Again, I talked about it a couple sentences ago in this video. You really have to have that mindset shift and understand where that user is in the journey. So I don't want you to sit here and expect conversion immediately out of this campaign. Although again, depending on the creative, this can absolutely happen. I also want you, when you're building this type of campaign, to using your first party data and using your audiences effectively. Jill had an amazing video a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was even a week ago, that talked about a client that she had. It was an Indian restaurant, and she got into the specifics on how she was able to help this client. But I'm going to talk about it from my perspective. So her takeaway was really getting at those audiences ahead of when that user is making that decision. And then based on what you know about that user. I had a very, very specific example of this with one of my clients. I was doing marketing for an emergency room. And so natural thought is like, should I go to the emergency room near me, emergency room, doctor's office near me, that type of thing. But I said, oh my gosh, well, that's not maybe how a user would search. Maybe they would start searching signs of a heart attack, signs of a panic attack, signs of, what should I do with my, symptom? And then we could advertise on those terms in terms of the emergency room and the hospital that we were promoting. Now, I was using this in a search campaign. And again, this was back in the old days of PPC. So a lot of when I think about that, because of sensitive issues, probably couldn't be done today. But looking back, if you see what I was doing, I was getting at symptoms and before and what I know about the user. So if you kind of take that into consideration with a client, what you're really looking at is like, what do you know about the user? So if you were marketing a stroller, for example, or diapers, maybe beforehand you would look at people that just bought a house, or you would look at people that like certain in-market segments, people that are interested in family trips, family cooking, different types of things that indicate that they may be in the market for diapers. You can look at a cross-reference of interests and demographics. You just have to think through those things. If you were selling a jogging stroller, people that are interested in running combined with people that are interested in day trips, you have to really, really pull in your audience. I think when you stick for, in market for baby goods, or if you stick with parents, I'm a parent, but I'm definitely not looking for a stroller. So again, it's really about like cross-referencing those different audiences and what you know about them and building those segments so you can really target effectively with demand gen. The more effective you're going to get with your audience, the better your campaign is going to work. Since obviously it's different than search because you're not talking about people just typing in search terms. And I also talked about this as that really, really critical factor of creative. That is really where you're going to see success or failure in a campaign like demand gen. And I said that there are many times when these campaigns do convert. When I was running these campaigns during sales period and I had very, very sales focused creative, I was getting most sales right away, 50% off, shop now type creative. I was running conversion type creative in this capacity, and these campaigns were absolutely converting because it was during the holiday season. It was when buyer intent was really high writ large. And so people would see that and it would serve as that reminder, and then they'd come back and convert on those, and then those ads would take the credit for it. So don't discount them as converting. It just depends on the creative, the time of year, and where the user is in their buyer journey. So really, let's talk about the risk and the reward. The risk here is that you are not going to get that conversion. You're just going to get that awareness. And again, awareness is so much harder to measure because you can't tap into someone's brain. I do feel like Google more and more is rolling out, and I could see them rolling out in the future, a lot of these survey tools, but a lot of those require that you're spending a certain amount. There are brand lift studies and different things that Google has rolled out to be able to run to measure the effectiveness of those campaigns. So again, things to consider when you are running demand gen campaigns. But the real reward is that they are affordable. They are accessible, and they are run in these immersive experience where Google is experimenting a lot. And again, if you have that right audience, it's a great way to reach them effectively for that more affordable cost. So to wrap it up, if you can't afford Google or your budget is tight, you don't have to sit on the sidelines. I would say first and foremost, I still stand by my recommendation of a content first approach. If you can afford a little bit, shift your focus towards demand gen. If you're ready to do more, I would start with demand gen plus a branded search campaign. Your branded search is going to be more affordable. And then lastly, I would start layering in a performance max and or some of the non-brand campaigns, or even an AI max when your budget starts to get bigger and bigger. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. I am glad to have you. If you have any questions, comment, leave me a note. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all over the internet, and happy optimization.